and we'll look at what basically makes a research paper, and what are the things that you can do to make your research paper stand out, and how you can get your research paper in one of the or in some of the best journals that are out there. So in that regard, we have already seen the overall process of research paper writing. If you remember from that session, I described that we typically have 5 different sections or 5 different phases in the writing. Among them, 2 of these sessions, like the revision and the drafting, they can be iterative in nature. So you have the pre-writing phase where you come up with an idea, and then you have the drafting phase where you write a rough draft of the entire research that you have carried out, and you do some revisions, and you again go back to the draft, and again you revise it, and so on. And once you are done with all of this, you do some minor editings based on maybe the journal that you are going to focus. Maybe based on that, you edit a little in the sense that what reference format they want, or in what format they want the figures and the tables, or in what format they want the text in terms of layout and all that you decide. And after that, you go in for the publication basically, and in the publication step, you basically decide that which journal you are going to target. And in this regard also, I gave you 2 different strategies that you can apply. The first strategy is that you can go and look at the your own reference section from the paper that you are going to publish, and see that where the papers that you have referred to have been published, and you come up with, and you get some idea that this particular journals would be the kind of most ideal for your research also. The second kind of idea that you can get regarding where you can publish your articles can be from the websites like the website of the Clarivate Analytics Match Manuscript, and the Match Manuscript option in notable publishers like Elsevier or Springer or Wiley. So basically, with this in mind, we'll continue further, and we'll look at some micro details of what makes a good research paper. So 1 minute, just give me a second. Okay, so we had completed until here. So now let us look at what basically a typical research article structure looks like. Okay, and when I say a typical research article, I am looking at a research paper which is a typical research paper where, or a typical technical paper in that sense, or a typical research paper in that sense, where you have some data, and you have made some analysis on the data, and you have some results on the data, and you have some conclusions on the data. Again, the process will be a little different for a review paper, or a something like a letter to the editor and so on. But typically in this session, we are concentrated only about the research article, which is basically the most common type of article that we generally write. Again, review articles and letters to the editors, these are very specific and specialized kind of articles, or research articles, or scholarly articles that we write. We will not talk about them for now. We'll talk only about the research articles. Now, if you look at this particular typical structure of the research article, what you find here is that we can divide the entire research paper broadly into these particular categories. The categories can be the abstract, introduction, literature review, methodology, results, discussion, conclusion, acknowledgments, and references. Again, this is again and again, I'm repeating this. This is a typical strategy, or this is a typical kind of structure for a research paper. It doesn't mean that this will be there in all the cases, but this structure is necessary, or this structure you can find in 95 to 98% of the papers or research papers that you see around. There may be a little difference in the flow in terms of maybe in some cases the introduction and the literature review are not 2 separate sections, but they are 1 single section. I will also talk about when this is needed. Again, there may be some cases where you find results and discussions as a single section, and in some cases you may find discussion and conclusion as a single section. Again, this kind of liberty with the arrangement is also dependent on the author. At the same time, it is also dependent only on the journal that you are sending. Okay, so I'll tell you how it is dependent on the journal also. So now let us first discuss the abstract and what basically an abstract is. So in the abstract, what you do is that you can think of your abstract as a kind of a uh, summary for your entire paper, for the rest of the paper, or you can think of the abstract as an advertisement for the entire paper. Why I say it is an advertisement for the entire paper is because if you y- you all are researchers, you all read a lot of papers from other researchers also. So what is the first thing that you do whenever you need a particular paper, whenever you need to research about a particular topic? What you do is that maybe you go to a search engine like Google Scholar, or maybe you go to the Scopus database, or maybe you go to the Web of Science database, and there you write some keywords. Depending on the keywords, you get some results. Okay. And in general, you know that all these indexing sites, maybe it may be the Scopus, or it may be the Web of Science, or in fact the databases like Google Scholar, all of them have only two things. The first thing is that they have the abstract. The second thing that they have is the title. So generally, if you look at some statistics, you will find that title is the most read part of any journal, because of any journal article, right? Because once you search something with the help of the keywords, the first thing that you are going to do is that you're going to read the title. Now, based on the title, you are going to see whether this article is something that you are looking for or it is not. Again, if you feel that okay, this article may be related to my topic and this is something that I am searching for, the next thing that you do is that you read the abstract, and depending on what you find in the abstract, you decide whether you are going to read the paper or not, or whether you want the full version of the paper or not, right? So in that sense, the title plays the most important role in uh, for a uh, for a research paper, where people identify the work that is done in the research paper based on the title. Once a person is even mildly convinced that this particular, based on the reading the title, he's even when he is mildly convinced that he is going to this paper may be relevant, may or may not be relevant to my particular work, whenever he wants to know a little bit more information, he will read the abstract. And if the abstract is convincing, and if the abstract is a meaningful representation of the entire research that you have done, then only he will be able to he or she, the researcher, will be able to know that what is there in the paper just by reading the abstract. And depending on that only, he or she will be able to uh, make a decision whether he wants to uh, read the entire paper or not. So in that sense, the abstract is very, very vital. So basically, what are the main components that an abstract should have? It should have the problem statement, it should have some indication of the methodology that is used, and you should give some uh, findings. You should give some of the main findings that you have found out in the paper, and you should give the main conclusion that you have drawn from this research in the abstract. So in this regards, you see that we have a lot of information to give in the abstract, but if you look at all the requirements or all the policies that are laid out by almost any publisher, you will find that the maximum word limit is 200. In rare cases, you will find that you may go up to 250, but generally 200 is the uh, limit of the abstract. So within those 200 words, it may be roughly 10 lines. So if you are writing, suppose say 20-word lines, or maybe if you are writing 15-word lines, then it may be 30 lines. So basically, um, what you are doing is that, sorry, it may be 15, approximately another 15, 12 to 15 lines. If you are writing uh, 15 word sentences, then in those 12 sentences, you will have to uh, meaningfully gist out the entire paper that you have done. So that is why writing a abstract can be a bit of a art, and that is why because of its importance in the overall uh, convincing a particular researcher that whether he should read a particular paper or not, it has a great role to play. Now, next comes the introduction, where what you do is that you first again a typical introduction should be something like that, where you start with the broader territory of the paper that you are, or the research that you have done. Then from that territory you should uh, diverge into, or you should, in fact, you should converge into a small topic. Okay, you should converge into the small topic or the small area of the research that you are doing, and then you should describe more about that particular uh, subcategory problem that you are doing, and uh, uh, you describe some more literature on that in terms of what other people have done in that area, and what are the lacunas that are there, what is not done by these other authors, and so on, and you go on describing it. Okay, so in that sense, you see that if you see the structure of the introduction that I've shown here, I've shown it as a funnel shape. It means you start with a broader topic, you go inside, and as you go towards the end of the literature review, what you find is that it is a more, it is a more kind of you go into a very specialized area. Okay, you start with a broad territory and you go into the niche, and then within that niche you go into the subdomain of the niche that you are trying to work out, and then you describe the most relevant literature uh, related to that niche. So in that sense, you find that there is a gradual kind of convergence towards the research problem that you have done, right? So in terms of the flow of the information, there is a gradual kind of convergence. Again, you come to the methodology, where it is extremely important. This methodology section is extremely important, because it will help anyone who wants to carry your work further, or anyone who wants to replicate the study, to accurately know what you have done and how you have done. Okay, because uh, we have a statement in scientific world called garbage in, garbage out. It means if your methodology is flawed, then you are going to get flawed results. Okay, so that is why you need to describe the methodology as best as you can, and as uh, in terms of what actually you have done, so that the, in fact, the reviewer, or in fact the reader who is going to read it, he gets to know exactly what you have done, and he may be able to build on it, or he may be able to replicate it. In that sense, the methodology is a kind of uh, a bounded box, where you describe exactly what you have done. There is no need to uh, there is no need to like converge or diverge from it, in the sense that if suppose say you are using a method X, suppose say you are using any method called XYZ, start directly with this method, start directly with this method XYZ, and start describing it. No need to describe what was done before XYZ. Maybe something ABC was done before XYZ. No need to describe that. If you're not using it, no need to describe it. Directly describe the method XYZ that you are using, and directly talk about it, and directly say what you have done. No need to give any kind of literature, or any kind of, means, of course you can give some literature in the sense that suppose say you have taken an equation, or you have taken a particular value in a particular algorithm, or maybe you have taken a particular value in a particular method, then why did you take that method? For that you need a reference, but you do not need a reference in the sense that uh, how method xyz came into being from ABC. Means suppose say ABC is one method and xyz is another method. Suppose say xyz is developed from ABC, then you no need to describe how from ABC you come to how from ABC the method xyz was derived. Okay, you can directly start with the method xyz and continue, provided that you are using only method xyz in your research. Then again, you have the results. In this sense, when you talk about the results, you are talking purely from a unbiased and unopinionated point of view. Okay, what I mean by unbiased and unopinionated point of view is that you have the results, you just describe them. For example, you observe a particular trend, you describe them. That is the results. Okay, in that sense, there is no uh, uh, you can again see the results. I put the results in a square box. It means you describe it as it is. No need to sway away from the problem, or no need to describe the precursor to the problem, or the previous part of the problem, or the next part of the implications of that particular results. Okay, next you have something called the discussion. But in a lot of text, or in a lot of research paper, you will find that results and discussions are one and the same. In that case, uh, you can think of the results section instead of being here in this case. Okay, you can think of the results section instead of being here to be here. Whenever you are including the discussion or as a separate entity or even as an entity of the as an entity of the results, then it is important that you describe the results and you discuss the results. What I mean by discuss the results is that you discuss the implications of the results. You discuss the why this result was found. For example, you have found a particular trend that something is increasing or something is decreasing, something is happening. Why that is happening, that you have to discuss, and that is basically the discussion. And whenever you discuss something, whenever you discuss something, you have to diverge from the you have to uh, uh, make a connection towards the broader problem. For example, if you remember here, you were in a particular territory, and from that territory uh, you wandered into the niche problem, and from the niche problem you described a particular component of the niche problem, and so on. Now in the discussion, you start with a niche problem, okay, or whatever you have found in a niche problem. You try to describe that how these results you have found for this particular niche problem uh, affects the overall territory of the problem or overall problem or the overall domain that you have. Okay, and then you derive some conclusions. Again, these conclusions, it is important that you not only present the positive aspects of your research, but you also present the negative aspects of your project, of your work. In that sense, what I mean is that, suppose say there are some limitations to your study, means there are certain facts, or there are certain facts that you couldn't check, or there are certain uh, additional small additional problems that you could not solve, or there are some certain limitations to whatever you have done in terms of methodology or in terms of results, that you should describe in the conclusion. What it does is that it gives a kind of uh, realistic sense to the other readers that what you have done, and then they can also evaluate uh, their own research in this way. They can find, once they are also doing a particular research in a similar area, they can also look at the limitations that you have come up with and see whether these limitations on them too. Okay, and in some cases, when someone else is working on your research to make an iterative improvement to your research or to this research field as a overall, these limitations can be very very helpful, because someone else may do some additional work to address these limitations and make your study, whatever you have already done, a little more uh, robust in that sense. And then of course you have the acknowledgments, and then you have the references. Acknowledgments, again, there are some certain rules to acknowledgement. For example, if your project is funded by certain fundings, then you need to acknowledge that. For example, in my case, when I was in PhD, I was drawing stipend from MHRD. So it was important that I acknowledge the help in terms of the financial support they were providing me, because in fact they were providing me a good amount as the PhD stipend. And so this kind of acknowledgement should be, or this kind of uh, the help that you get from, even from an organization or even from a person, that should be mentioned in the study. For example, suppose say you carried out a certain test from certain laboratory, then you should thank that particular laboratory, or so on. Okay, and again, then you have the references. We'll talk into the references and all that in a more descriptive way. We'll see some of the tools that you can use to effectively manage your references, and we'll do that in a little while. So next, the typical research article structure you have already seen. I've already explained this particular flow of information that you see here in a very descriptive manner in the previous slide. So basically, in the introduction, you write down why you have done. Okay, so if you answer this particular 4 questions, you have a complete research paper. So basically, in the introduction you describe why you have done. Okay, and in the methods you describe how you have done. In the results you describe what you have done, and in the discussion you describe something called the so what. I have got these results, but what next means from what, from these results what else can I do with this. Okay, this is what you get from this. uh, these four answers should be answered in a typical research paper. Again, when we talk about this is again popularly known in the scientific world as the IMRET strategy. Okay, if you follow this IMRET strategy, and it is again a very widely followed strategy. Why does it makes a lot of sense? Because if you see in the structure that I have shown here on the left hand side, you can see that this is a proper there is a proper flow of information. You get to know about the problem, then you look at some relevant literature to that particular problem, then you learn about a particular method that can be helpful to solve that problem, and based on the method and the experiments or whatever the analysis done, you get some results. These results are there in the paper, and based on this paper you get some discussion which helps you to get the academic perspective as well as the knowledge perspective into the results. Because as I was telling the other day, data by itself is meaningless unless and until you draw some meaningful information from it, unless and until you get the information out of it. And data by itself is meaningless, and then you have the conclusion. Now, why is this IMRET kind of strategy so important? Because it is a very standard kind of flow. It is a very standard kind of flow, and anyone who sees a particular paper or reads a particular paper which is written in this particular standard, he can easily, if suppose say I am interested only in knowing the methodology that you have followed, I can easily go to the methodology part. I know exactly where to look for, uh, and then I can save a lot of time. So if you follow this kind of a strategy, again, you will save a lot of your own time as well as your fellow researchers' time who are going to refer to your paper. Again, we know that this particular kind of strategy that you see here, or this kind of flow of information that you see here, is kind of mandatory, is made mandatory by a lot of journals. In fact, most of the journals have made it mandatory to list the information in this kind of a format. Now, uh, when what okay, we saw that this is the typical order of a particular manuscript where you find information in a disorder. Of course, before the introduction, you have a abstract which I have not shown here in the IMRED principle. Of course, like the conclusion that you see here, you have a abstract at the top, right? And then you have some keywords also depending on the journal. But however, in most of the cases, keywords are something that needs to be provided to be along with the research article. But now, what is the typical sequence of writing a research paper? The typical sequence of writing a research paper is that you should start with the methodology, then you should write the results and discussion, then you should write the introduction and conclusion, and then the abstract and keywords, and last comes the title. Okay, I'll give you the logic behind this, why you should do this. Okay, for example, why do we need to start with the methodology? We need to start with the methodology because this is something that we are doing. And again, there is a lot of difference of opinion among researchers then is when to start writing. But a lot of senior researchers and a lot of renowned researchers all kind of advocate that whenever you are starting a research, you should start writing the paper immediately. Okay, though it may come as a shock to many of you who feels that, and maybe some of your seniors or maybe some of your mentors have told you that once you complete the entire research, then you should write the entire then you should start writing the paper. But it is generally seen that specifically in the area where you do a lot of experimentation based research, it is seen that writing or starting with the paper as soon as possible or as soon as you begin the research is a good kind of strategy. Okay, again, when I mean writing the paper, I am not talking about the final draft, but I am talking about maybe about the pre-writing phase or the drafting phase. So basically, what you need to do is that, suppose say you are in the experimentation sciences where you carry out some experimentation. Okay, I'm talking about physical experiments. If they may be in the field of sciences, they may be in the field of engineering, or they may be in the field in other fields. Okay, whenever you are involved in some live experiments, what you need to do is that you need to start writing the methodology as soon as possible, because now the methodology is very, very fresh in your mind. You exactly know how much ml of what reagent you have put in the solution. You exactly know what after this step what you have done and what you have not done. So that is why it is generally a good process, or it is generally recommended that you start writing the research paper as soon as you begin your research work. Again, you start with the methodology because this is the first thing that you do in any research, because you are following a particular method, and based on that method you are getting some results. Okay, then comes the results and discussion. So in the results and discussion, what you can do is that as soon as you have some results, means though in this case I advocate that you have, after you have all the results, you should start writing the results in the discussion phase. Or so basically what I say is that when you start a particular research project, and when you have just completed your methodology, means you have already completed all the methodology part, then or the methods part, you can start writing with the methodology. And as soon as you have some results, or in fact you have all the results, you plot them by using you decide based on the skeleton of the paper, or based on the schema of the paper, that how do you want to represent this research. Do you want to represent this research in form of bar graphs, or whether in pie charts, or whether in the form of line graphs, or whether in the form of box plots, whatever, in whatever format you want to represent this results. You want to represent the results in form of a table, or in the form of some micrographs, or whatever, in whatever format you want to describe the results. First you draw all the graphs that are necessary for it. Means all the, by graphs I mean all the visualizations. Okay, by graphs I mean all the visualization in terms of the tables and figures and everything that you need, that you think at this point are important and relevant for this research paper. You first find all of them out. Okay, next what you do is that, suppose say you have a couple of uh, a, a particular graph, or a particular graph in a table, or a couple of tables, or a couple of graphs. These are that are on a particular topic. Means within the topic itself, they are on some particular, they are describing some particular characteristics of the experiment or the research that you have done. Then you need to collect these two graphs, or these three graphs, or whatever, this information that you have, or this visualization that you have on that topic. You need to look at them together, and you need to write a small paragraph on them. Means it may be a small paragraph, it may be large paragraph. I'm just assuming that because it is only a small subsection of the entire research that you have done, it is going to be a small paragraph. So whatever you see from this result, you write it down. Maybe you do not write the discussion in this phase. If it comes to your mind that okay, I observe a particular trend in this particular data, and based on the visualizations that I've drawn, then if some probability theory comes to your mind, why this visualization may be there, why this kind of trend may be there, you write that also down. In this way, what you do now is that you break the entire paper into small pieces. Inside the paper also, inside the results and discussion, you break down the entire results and discussion into small pieces. So what you basically do is that on these four, or maybe on this small subset of the visualizations, you write a small discussion. Then you go to the next part of the visualization, or the next, maybe it may be another table, it may be another graph, it may be another couple of graphs, and so on. So you write another discussion there for all of them. Okay, and so on. You first you write all of them individually. Okay, all the discussions you write individually. Once you have all these individual discussions, once you have all these individual results and discussions, what you do is that you make all of them in a proper flow. Okay, to have the entire results and discussion. The next thing that you do is that you write down the introduction. Why I suggest that you write down the introduction after you write the results and discussion is because now you know that what you have done, because you have already done the methodology, you have already written the results and discussion. So now you exactly know that what you have done, which methods you have used, and what was your outcome. You know that, right? So now you can write the introduction better, because now you can describe exactly the relevant research, or the relevant research that you have kind of countered, or that you have kind of addressed. Okay, for example, now suppose say you have found a particular trend. Okay, you have found a particular trend, or a particular information in the data. So you try to find some relevant information to that in the previously published researches, and that you try to highlight in the introduction. And when finally a reader would read, so what he will get? He will get what he will get. He will start from here. So he will get the problem and the, excuse me, so he'll get the problem and the methods that have been followed by the other research. As he goes down to your particular paper, he gets to know about the method that you have used, and once he read the results, he can make a proper linkage between what has been done by the previous researchers and what has been done by you. Okay, that is why writing the introduction after results and discussion is a good strategy, because if you do that after writing the results and discussion, you know exactly what kind of references you want in the, or what kind of source material you want to give in the introduction. Okay, if you write the introduction before you write the results and discussion, what will happen is that you are not sure, because since you have not written the results and discussion, you may not be sure that what I am going to get, right? So what you will try to generally try to do is that you will try to write a very broad kind of introduction. Okay, but if you write it after having the results and discussion, your introduction will be more focused on the literature that was available, on the topic that you have addressed, or uh, on the information that you have gained from your research. And then of course after that you write down the introduction, because now you have the introduction, you have the results and discussion, you have the methodology. Now you can write down the conclusion better, because you initially, what you did was that initially in the introduction you pointed out what has not been done. Okay, you did that because you have done it after the results and discussion, so you could easily point out what has not been done previously, and then you have tackled the same problem in your results and discussion now. So when you write down the conclusion, you are able to conclude better, because you know that you have already highlighted what is not done for this problem, and you have addressed that in your results and discussion problem. So in that sense, your conclusion is much better if you write it after the results and discussion and introduction. And of course you write the abstract after that. As I told, abstract is nothing but a ad, or it is a summary for your entire paper, is an advertisement for your entire paper, because most of the people will read your abstract, and only then they will decide whether they want to read the entire paper or not. So that is why you need to write the abstract at the very last, because now you know that what exactly you have done, in which field you have worked on, or which subset of the problem that you addressed, and all these things you can immediately highlight or effectively highlight in your abstract. Again, writing the abstract in the very last is also important, because you have very limited number of words for the abstract. For example, we do not have any such limit for conclusion. Generally we see that conclusions are made of 200 words, or in some cases they are 500 words. I have seen conclusions that may be 1500 words, in fact even to 1500 words. In that case, maybe they may be labeled as recommendations and conclusions, or conclusions and future scope and all that. So in that sense, the conclusion can be 1500 words, but nowhere you will find that the abstract runs beyond 300 words. So that is why you have very limited number of space that is available for the abstract. That is why it is important that you write the abstract at last, so that you get to highlight the most relevant researches and the most novel researches that, or the novel outcomes that have come up from this particular research paper. And then you write down the keywords, because now once you have completed the entire paper, you know that which keywords will be most relevant. Again, keywords are very important, because any researcher who is going to search for a particular paper, he is going to write down some keywords. No one is going to write down the entire name of the paper. Okay, if suppose they know that already such and such paper by this name exists, maybe in that case they are going to write down the name of the entire paper and search. But if they do not know that any particular paper uh, exists on this particular topic, what they are going to do is that they are going to search by certain keywords. That is why keywords are extremely important. And finally, you give the entire research or the entire research article a relevant title, because this title is something that is the most read part of any research paper. So we'll again talk into detail that how do you decide on all of this in the next session. Thank you.